The debate around Bubba Wallace was supposed to be over. NASCAR had made its ruling, Wallace had accepted it publicly, and the sport had moved on to the next race weekend. Then he opened his mouth again, and this time, it wasn't the penalty causing the storm. It was his own words, delivered twice, in two very different settings, and fans caught both moments immediately. At North Wilkesboro, days after his infamous Echo Park Speedway penalty, Wallace delivered a comment that seemed harmless on the surface. After a clean, solid run, he said it was nice to finally keep my finishing position. 7 words. No names mentioned, no accusations made, no direct reference to NASCAR officials at all. But NASCAR fans and media didn't take it as a throwaway line. They read it as a quiet, calculated jab at the penalty that had cost him 27 championship points just days earlier. The internet split instantly, the same way it had after the original ruling. Was this an innocent comment from a driver, simply relieved to finish clean for once? Or a subtle shot fired at NASCAR officials who were still watching his every move heading into the playoffs? Before getting into how NASCAR itself has responded to the growing noise around Wallace's comments, this channel, NASCAR Trackline TV, is closing in on 500 subscribers, and every single person watching right now is part of getting us there. If this kind of breakdown is something you want more of, take a second to subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment with your take below. It genuinely makes a difference for a channel this size, and it helps us keep bringing you stories like this one every single week. For context on how this started, Wallace had been dropped from 2nd to 29th at Echo Park after NASCAR ruled the number 23 Toyota advanced track position by dipping below the out-of-bounds line during a late race push from teammate Ty Gibbs. Wallace himself admitted afterward that he misunderstood the exact wording of the rule, saying, "I always thought it was like gaining position, but no, it's gaining track position," and calling it a rule's a rule. He also noted that he expected data showing he tried to give the position back to matter with officials, adding that the damage was already done. Behind the scenes, 23XI Racing spent more than 30 minutes in a meeting with NASCAR officials after the checkered flag, a detail that suggests the team believed there was real ambiguity worth contesting rather than a clear-cut violation. That penalty alone had already reignited the yellow line debate across the entire garage. What's new, and what's pulling the whole controversy back into the spotlight, is what happened in the days that followed the original ruling. 6 regular season races remained on the schedule when the North Wilkesboro comment landed, with Wallace sitting 13th in the Cup Series standings and 23XI Racing fighting to protect a shrinking playoff cushion heading into the final stretch. Every point mattered, and Wallace knew it better than anyone in the garage, so when reporters and fans began picking apart his "keep my finishing position" remark, the team stayed completely silent, refusing to confirm or deny whether it was a genuine reference to the penalty at all. That silence only fueled more speculation rather than settling it, and by the time the next race weekend arrived, the story hadn't cooled off the way most one-line comments usually do. Then, just when it looked ready to fade into the background entirely, Wallace poured gasoline on it himself. After finishing 6th at the Window World 450, Wallace sat down with TNT Sports and described it as a good night, with no yellow line and fractions. This time there was no ambiguity about what he was referencing. He brought up his own penalty, live, on national television, completely unprompted by the interviewer. Fans who had defended him after Echo Park suddenly weren't sure what to make of it anymore. Was this a driver simply cracking a joke about a rough stretch of racing, or someone who still believed, weeks later, that he had been wronged by the original ruling? To be clear, this remains speculation and not a confirmed statement of grievance. NASCAR has not indicated any official friction between Wallace and race control since the penalty was issued. But the comments themselves are on record, they are real, and they are impossible for fans to simply ignore. Reaction from the garage and the broader fanbase has stayed just as divided as it was during the week of the original penalty. Ryan Blaney offered sympathy without fully taking a side, saying, "That sucks, nobody wants to lose that many points like that, but the rule is the rule." A tough break for Bubba. NASCAR's official account reiterated its position on the matter, clarifying that the number 23 was penalized for advancing track position below the out-of-bounds line, and that giving the position back afterward does not erase the violation itself. A fan going by the name RacingFan24 argued that Wallace clearly tried to avoid wrecking the field, and that NASCAR punished the outcome rather than the intent behind the move. Another fan, posting as Oval Track Talk, fired back that rules only work if they're enforced the same way every single time, and that Wallace crossed below the line. End of discussion. No exceptions. A critic using the name Stock Car Central raised a sharper point entirely. If Cup Series drivers themselves can't agree on how the yellow line rule actually works, NASCAR needs to rewrite it before the playoffs arrive. Each side kept pointing to the exact same set of facts and walking away with a completely different conclusion. A NASCAR media voice going by the name NASCAR on Fox summed up where things stood, noting that Wallace says he understands NASCAR's explanation now, but that the debate over the yellow line rule isn't fading anytime soon regardless of what Wallace says publicly. That single sentence captured the entire problem facing both sides. Wallace's public acceptance of the penalty and his on-air jokes about it simply don't match up cleanly, and neither Wallace nor NASCAR has done anything concrete to close that gap between the two. What makes this harder to dismiss is the pattern building underneath it all. One comment about keeping his finishing position could be written off as coincidence, a passing remark from a driver simply having a good day at the track. A second comment, direct and specific, referencing no yellow line on national television, is far harder to explain away as nothing at all. 27 points, a playoff spot hanging in the balance, and now two separate remarks that fans have stitched together into a single, ongoing narrative. A driver who insists publicly that he's moved past it, yet keeps circling back to the exact moment that cost him the most heading into the postseason. So the question goes straight to the comments section. Was Bubba Wallace genuinely at peace with the penalty from the moment it was handed down, or have his remarks at North Wilkesboro and the Window World 450 been a quiet, deliberate message that he still disagrees with NASCAR's call? Comment "rule" or "robbed" below, and share this video with another NASCAR fan who needs to weigh in on both sides of this growing argument. With the Brickyard race next on the calendar and 23XI Racing carrying real momentum into it, the question now is whether this controversy finally settles down, or whether one more close call near the yellow line sends the entire story roaring back into the headlines all over again. If you enjoy real NASCAR breakdowns like this, you'll like what's coming next.